In case you missed it, we have been following the story of Greg Weber's professional gap year for all of 2025. Greg burned the corporate ladder, sold everything, and he and his family have been on the road ever since. Part of why we are following his story is not to just look at all the adventures, but for exactly what is happening right now. Change. What is happening right now in the space of going from one lifestyle of the ladder to another lifestyle of freedom and of service? What happens to the human brain, the human heart, the human seeking another meaning in life when you hit pause for nearly a year? Some people take a weekend, maybe 2 weeks, but for Greg, he's completely owning this professional gap year. And I'm excited to be a fly on the wall with the rest of you, seeing what he is going through and highly anticipating what is next. It's natural for when we humans make space to move to a new chapter that a few phases happen. The first is grief, or it could be just pure rest at all levels, which our brain, body, and soul needs for the reprieve. The next phase is deprogramming as our confidence increases. And then as novelty starts to wear off, pre-contemplation is then followed by contemplation of what could be. This is then followed by preparation, action, and then maintenance. I talked extensively about this on last week's podcast, and we call this the trans-theoretical model of change. Every human goes through these 5 steps when making a change, whether or not you realize it. What's interesting is that Greg has gone through this cycle twice for one single behavioral change, a career change. The first change was the 5 steps he took to leave the workforce altogether, to sell the house, and to hit the road. And quite frankly, there's nothing stopping Greg from continuing this adventure for longer than a year, which just may be the case. However, what history has told us of others who have had major career changes or who have taken long sabbaticals is that Greg is about to find something inside of him to give back to the world. David Brooks calls this strength to strength. Arthur Brooks calls this the second mountain. I call it your second calling. And if you've never read the 2 books I just mentioned, Strength to Strength or The Second Mountain, both books are worth the investment. Anyhow, after this break, we will dive into the latest conversation with our friend Greg. You are going to enjoy this conversation. We'll be right back. You are listening to the Work Life Eubiosis podcast with your host, Charleston Edwards. If this is your first time here, welcome. My goal is simple: to eradicate burnout and to bring harmony, purpose, and balance to this world, starting with the family. My hope is that this show and the story shared will provide encouragement and ideas that will be valuable to you on your journey to work-life freedom. So let's dive in to today's episode. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Great to be back.
Where are you today?
We are in Fort Peck, Montana, so pretty much northeast Montana.
Did you just arrive?
Yeah, we just got here yesterday from we were just outside of Theodore Roosevelt National Park in far western North Dakota. Spent 3 or 4 days there on a horse ranch with some horses and a bunch of flies, but we weren't there very often because we spent most of our days hiking and driving through Theodore Roosevelt National Park, which was beautiful.
Wow. What's the weather like in the Dakotas and Montana this time of year?
Pardon me?
What is the weather like in the Dakotas?
Well, it's been, I mean, we just have had amazingly beautiful weather, and we've missed some storms and stuff that have gone through the last week or so, whether we're in Minnesota, Wisconsin, or North Dakota. But it's been like lower 80s and just beautiful. Today, actually, here in Montana, it's supposed to be 102, which I think is probably not normal for this time of year. I have no idea, I guess. um, but it's gonna be warm while we're here this week, and then we head into Canada on Friday, and the weather up there looks like it's going to be in the low 70s, which is warm for them that time of year up near Calgary too. So I don't know. God loves us, or we're blessed, or something, because we've had more beautiful weather than we've had bad. That's for sure.
Wow. So this is your fourth time on the show. It's been 7 months since you started this professional gap year and the tour around the country. Can you sort of recap where you've been and what has been your most memorable experience to date?
Wow. Okay. So we started January 7th from my father-in-law's home because we didn't have a home at that time. We sold ours in November, in Florida. Did a loop of Florida for basically the whole month of January. Then started heading west through Mississippi, Alabama. Spent time in Louisiana. We're in Texas for most of the month of February. Then we're planning on going through New Mexico. We talked about that, Gone with the Wind, or I can't remember what you titled the one with it, but Following the Wind or Running from the Wind or something like
Yes,
that. We were
Racing the Wind.
Racing the Wind. Yeah. We were planning on spending quite a bit of time in New Mexico, and we spent very little time in New Mexico, which was a blessing because we ended up in Arizona for almost a month, which we had no intention of and was great. Then went up through Utah and into Colorado. Then left Colorado and uh, peeked into Wyoming, and we're planning on spending time in South Dakota. And then we talked about that. I think that's when my dad was not doing well, and so we headed back to Minnesota, which we had planned on doing and spending most of the summer there, and ended up spending a couple extra weeks, or got there early because my dad passing. And then spent 11 weeks, which was awesome, mostly at my parents' farm, and I did a little bit of excursion from there, but then spent some time in northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, back through Wisconsin and northern Minnesota into North Dakota stops, including the last one at Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and then arrived here yesterday in Montana, and we'll be here this week until we head across the border on Friday into Canada and head to Calgary and Banff and Jasper National Parks. So, I mean, most memorable, being at home with my mom. Sorry, give me a second. Um, After my dad passed was, by far the most memorable, I would say, just from a personal experience from it was very meaningful, it was awesome to be there with her and my family. So that for me is the most memorable, but it's just a personal thing. As far as the travel and the locations and things we've been to, I don't know if I mentioned Cisco, Utah, but Cisco, Utah is population 2. There's a general store and then one other person that bought the post office or something that lives there, but it was our staying point to go to a lot of the national parks. But that area and that region was just awe-inspiring. It was just one day after the next where we would go to one of the national parks and be like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then go to the next one and that was even cooler. So I would say Southern Utah will be a place that we'll definitely go back to, and was one of the most memorable spots that we've been to.
Okay. And I heard Banff is on your to-do list to go.
Yeah.
That's on my bucket list. That would be my personal favorite of where you're going. But can you tell me if Banff is what you're looking forward to most in the next 6 months? Or
Well, two or three things I would say. As far as scenery and things like that, yes. And Banff was like the absolute must stop for Nicole, my wife, when we first started talking about this trip, and it was something that we booked very early on, just because to try and get in there. So, and everything we've seen from some other RV folks that we follow and other friends of ours that have their acquaintances, it's just it's almost like the pictures are unbelievable, and then everybody's posted pictures said it doesn't do it justice. Like, well, that isn't amazing in that picture. So, really looking forward to that as far as the scenery and things like that. And I've only been to Canada on our trip to Alaska, and that was just our launching point, and our return point was Vancouver, and we spent one day there. So I've never really, awkwardly enough, living in Minnesota almost my entire life before moving to Florida, and was never to Canada before that. So I'm looking forward to kind of see what Canada's all about and things like that. But other than that, as far as looking forward to, we will be heading west from there eventually after we come back into the United States, and hopefully go to all Glacier National Park, Yellowstone, and Grand Teton. Then we'll be heading west to where my daughter Peyton is in Seattle, and where my dear friend DJ is just west of Portland. So a couple personal reasons why those will be favorite stops for me. But as far as scenery and things like that, I would say Banff is probably what we're looking forward to most.
Fantastic. So getting to the Seattle and Portland area, will that take you through October, November, or is that?
Yeah, probably October. I would say those two spots will, sometime around there. We don't know exactly. It depends how much time we spend in Montana and Wyoming when we come back from Canada. But, October-ish will probably be that. And then, when we get to early November, we got to be thinking about being somewhere where we know it's not going to freeze and be cold, and we haven't looked too much into that yet, but we'll probably be heading, we don't know. I don't know if we're going to head into Northern California or head back through Utah, but we have to get somewhere where, we can't have lines freezing in the camper.
Right. Is the goal to get back to Florida by January?
Back to Florida, I mean, eventually, just because that's where, my father-in-law's home and where our stuff is. Right. So we need to get back there sometime, but no specific date really, as of now. That may change as we start to look more in earnest at finances and whether I need to go back to work and what that looks like from a timing standpoint.
Well, Greg, that's a great segue, and I'm going to come back to a couple questions that I asked you earlier on, because we've been 6-7 months now of enjoying the novelty and the creation of this country. The time to be with family for almost 3 months over the summer. You're going to have more family time later this year. Where's your mindset now related to work? In the past, you've said that it's not on your radar. You just wanted to enjoy family, enjoy the travel. But has your mind started to plan for 2026 and beyond?
A tiny bit, I would say. So I, as we talked about before, I really wanted to give myself the first 6 months to just not even think about it, other than, throw down a crazy idea in my crazy idea book or whatever, some stuff like that. And I have some very successful, dear friends of mine that have had some career changes or potentially could have some career changes coming up. So, I've had discussions about them about, do you want to start a business? Just conversations. But as far as like thinking about when am I going to earn a regular income or paycheck or whatever, or find an income stream, haven't really gotten too much in detail yet. But it's been really, I don't know, comforting, I guess, from a standpoint of I had several people when we were spending time in Minnesota, to me, I've shared with my friends or my coworkers, what you're doing and taking this gap year and traveling the country and things like that. And they're really curious how you're doing it. And so it sprung in my mind like, well, maybe that's what I do next. I certainly will help my family and friends do it, without a charge or an income with it. But, I started thinking about maybe there's an opportunity for that type of coaching out there. Maybe it's preparing somebody who's thinking about doing it a year from now. And maybe it's somebody who's thinking, well, my kids are teenagers or whatever, and I, quote unquote, can't do it for another 3 or 4 or 5 years. And, getting them set up in the mindset of helping them think about financing and budgeting and what that means and that kind of stuff. And from a standpoint of like what it's really meant for us, just healing the soul, I would say, of doing this travel and seeing the country. So that's about as far as I've gotten. I would love if that, if I could do that from a coaching standpoint and, and earn some income where I wouldn't have to go back to a quote unquote regular job, that'd be awesome. Whether that's a reality yet, to be determined yet, I guess.
Greg, I think it's a little bit poetic that your roadmap can potentially help someone else's roadmap.
Yeah, I mean that's the part that was so enlightening or encouraging, I guess, when I had people tell me like, "Well, tell me how I could do it." And and everybody's different with where they are, whether that's, with kids' age or their career or whatever. But it made me think about, your, own your 5 to 9 and, Kelly's 90-minute school day. It's like I told one of my friends, I'm like, it doesn't matter that your kids are teenagers. I said, I got a solution for a 90-minute school day, your kids be on the road. And the rest of after you do the 90-minute school day, your kids could be, learning from all the places you see and things like that. So, yeah, I just think it's been very encouraging to hear that other folks are not only interested in hearing like what we've done because it's a little out of the norm, right? Doing it at 53, but also that people are also going like, I wonder if I could do that. And again, if I could help somebody do that, happy to do that. And if I could earn some money doing it, cherry on top of the ice cream, I guess, with that.
You're definitely speaking to alternative lifestyles. It's why I am so enamored and excited to have you repetitively on the show. Even what you're doing is alternative to what I'm doing, but what we're both doing is not normal.
Yeah.
And people love that. People love hearing stories. We were just talking before we hit record of some of our mutual friends that are following along because it's amazing. And I say that because a lot of people say, I wish I could do that as well. And the biggest obstacle,
Yeah.
there's many obstacles, but the biggest obstacle is usually around finances. So I want you to answer, why aren't you worried about finances?
Yeah. So on the I wish, I would tell people just to about what if, and you and I have talked about this. Why not now? Get into that mindset because I do think it is a mindset. And then again, is it just something you can drop a hat and say, I'm going to do this, which, you and I have talked about. I didn't do either, but the I wish part bothers me when people say that. It's like, if you can wish it, just figure out how to do it. And I'm not saying like, oh, I wish I could, take a 3-month vacation in Europe. Well, okay, there's lots of logistics involved in that, right? But I would say for most people, you can figure it out, whatever that I wish is. And if the I wish is, I wish I could quit my job and go travel the world for, 3 months, 6 months or whatever, I think most people literally can figure that out. Like there's a logistical way to figure that out. And again, if I can help them, that'd be awesome. But I think people get stuck in the mindset of what we're all been taught, right? Go to work 9 to 5, or, unfortunately for a lot of us, it's 7 to 7 or whatever that ends up being. Get my paycheck, contribute to my 401, get my matching, work till I'm 65, take my social security, all that stuff that we're taught is the way we're supposed to do it. Who says? I mean, whoever started that? I mean, it's garbage if you think about it. Social Security for people that are going to live, think they're going to live off, so it was never intended for that. And very, very few people can do that. And with all the inflation now, unfortunately, a lot of people, elderly people on Social Security, are learning that.
I do agree with the I wish. Last week, I released an episode that talked about being stuck in the contemplation or daydreaming phase. And I think I wish brings the daydreaming into fruition. And then I went into the trans-theoretical model of change, and that third step of change being the preparation. And I believe the bridge between the I wish and taking action is actual preparation.
Yeah.
So, Greg, let's actually go back a year, because I know you took a year and maybe even 2 years in this model of change to prepare for what you're doing now. Can you just sort of give an overview of what it took for you to sell the house, sell your stuff, buy a camper, start planning and taking action?
Yeah, so I would say it was about a year, maybe 15 months of from the the crazy idea of let's do this, let's sell our house and buy a camper, and from the just mentioning that day and then Nicole telling me I was crazy to leaving it alone for a little bit. It was really just for me, I'm old school, down with a note and a pencil and started scribbling. What would it actually mean? What's the actual number if we sold our house? What does it cost to store some of our stuff if we're going to keep it? What if we got rid of all of our stuff? What are the stuff that we have would we no way get rid of? So, we found out that was very little. And I think a lot of people would do that. If you start thinking about all the stuff you have, it's just stuff, the majority of it. So I think we've talked about this. Our 10 by 10 storage unit is filled with some things that we quote unquote need, but it's mostly stuff that's near and dear to our hearts, whether that's something we, was passed down to us or has sentimental meaning or one of our kids made or, things like that. So that was a big part of it. But the biggest thing is really for us was sitting down and just starting to do, what does it mean financially? What would we leave, with the equity in our house? What would that mean as far as, how much was it going to cost us to actually purchase this camper? So we got a ballpark on that and looking at RVs and going to a bunch of RV shows and things like that. And then it was like, well, what do we think we'd spend? So I was doing a lot of following of folks that are doing what we're doing and asking, not asking them, but just reading their posts and things like that, looking at what the cost of staying in, this park that we're in now in Fort Peck and some of the national parks and things like that. How much would we spend, on fuel, things like that. So it was just logistically, it was figuring out the financial part of it. And for me professionally, again, being the CEO of Campfire at the time was, where's Campfire at? What would happen if I leave? Fortunately for me personally, selfishly, and very fortunately for Campfire, in my mind, we had a natural succession with Shauna taking over as CEO, which is what happened and has been amazing. She's doing an amazing job, which I knew she would. So some of that was, some people don't have to worry about that, which I think is great. If you're, if I'll throw this in, for a lot of people, if you quit or if you die or if you get really sick and have to quit your job, they're going to post your job and you're going to be replaced within a month. That's just reality. Maybe a CEO position is a little bit different because there's more transition time and it took a little bit longer time with the search. But realistically, a lot of people don't have to be or be not selfish about it and say, well, I don't want to hurt my company or I don't want to hurt my boss or whatever. They're going to replace you. And for a lot of them, they're not going to care, which is unfortunate. And I did not have that situation with Campfire, but people worry too much about, I don't want to say people shouldn't be loyal to their employer, but the loyalty often isn't reciprocated. So that shouldn't be a huge part of it for most people. So That was some planning for me. But again, the biggest part was like, what does it actually take financially for us to be on the road? And then equating that back to like what we're leaving and what we're, gaining from our house and equity was the biggest thing for us.
Well, knowledge is power. Getting intimate with knowing the numbers sort of removes the fear factor. But you brought up something else around life events. Life events typically are a wake-up call. And as a family, Greg, life events often shifts values of what's important right now or shifts the vision. Can you tell me a little bit about how you and your family have been able to stay on the same page of vision and values in light of life events that has shifted everything?
Yeah, so I don't know if we've talked about this or not, but it's most of this crazy idea, if you want to put that, started with, and my wife primarily, along with my father-in-law, were the major caregivers to my mother-in-law. But it also was a wake-up call because my father-in-law and mother-in-law planned to do what we're doing, travel the country. But so that was definitely a life-changing event. the disease comes with a risk that my wife could have it too. So that was inspiring to us as far as timing. Why not do it now? That's where the why not philosophy came in, is let's do it now when we're healthy and able. And now I think about the hiking and stuff we've done. I've been very fortunate and blessed that we're in shape, and physically and mentally to be able to do that. So it was certainly a life event that inspired us. And it's that same thing. And I think about my dad, even, passing at 93 after a very full life. It's like, how many people get that chance? And you think about I think about all the people that have passed away since my dad did, in and around the community where I grew up, and none of those folks were 93. So I think the reality that tomorrow or today may be our last day is something that both Nicole and I embrace. And again, it's the inspiration for the why not do it now, because you don't know if you're going to have tomorrow. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a big part of, like, the why not now is really what what inspired us and keeps us going on this venture that we're on.
And thank you for sharing. Earlier, you mentioned the craziest idea journal. I've tried to peek inside of this journal a few months ago. You wouldn't let me. You've also shared that your heart is starting to gravitate to others that may have been in your position from an executive level, that of people that may need to reset. If you're looking in your journal right now, what is the craziest idea, if you can share?
I'm not ready to share with you some of the, like, business startup ideas,
Right,
because
right.
they're wacky, but I'll share one. How's that? And this is, other people have done it, but I saw a guy that I follow on Instagram or something like that has two or three of them. One of them is in Hawaii. He has a floating dock with a golf green on it, right? And it's 110 yards or something, quote unquote,
Yes.
easy for folks. It's $3 a shot, and you got new people every day coming because there's tourists. So it's in touristy areas, right? So you don't have to worry about new customers. But he charges $3 a shot, and if somebody makes a hole in one, it's 10 grand, and he happily pays it out once every month or 2 months, right? Somebody gets a hole in one, and then that goes on there, so it becomes a reality, right? It's not like you can't do it or it's impossible, but he's making a lot of money on $3 a golf ball because people are there all day, every day. I think he has like 7 or 10 tee boxes on this little spot, and he rents this little tiny piece of land, doesn't have to pay even for the floating dock. He's not paying rent to anybody for that. So I would love, it's not something where I would sit there every day. I probably would for a while, just because I would enjoy it so much, and meeting people and talking to them and actually getting excited when somebody got a hole in one, even though I'd have to pay him 10 grand. But financially it works out for that person. I haven't dove into it much more, but the math makes sense. If you have X number of people show up every day and you're only paying it out, 5, 6, 7, 10 times a year, that's a crazy idea where I would love to start it, do it for a while myself, and maybe keep doing it. It's kind of like, think about Tom Cruise in Cocktail, the movie. He moves
Right.
down to somewhere, some island in the middle of nowhere, and just has his own little sandbar, right? And he loves it, meets new people every day. So that's one of the crazy ideas that's in there. Whether that goes anywhere or not, I hope 20 people that are listening to this don't go do it before I do, but there's lots of spots to do it and make it successful, I think. And
Uh, do,
golf's my passion, so I would love doing it from that aspect as well.
do you need a business partner?
Need is a strong word, but if I'm looking for one, I'll put you on the top of the list, my friend.
Yes, yes. I would love to. Future episodes may be us doing a business plan and
Yeah, that
some
would be.
operations behind this.
I'll tell you what, it's been and I mean that sincerely. If I was going to be in business with someone, you'd be at or near the top of the list. I feel very blessed that I have several people where, one, I know I could trust them. They say never go into business with a friend, but and maybe people who have done it regret that. But I do have several, dear friends, including yourself, that I would have no qualms about, going into a business together, depending on what it is. But um, I love that idea. If it's something where it'd be that golf thing that I just described to you, I mean, that would be just a gas to me. I would love it. And to share that with someone as a business partner and friend, I think would be pretty cool too. So maybe we'll have to open up with several locations, so you can run a couple and I'll run a couple or something like that.
Well, when we stop recording, we're going to continue to talk about this.
All right, sounds good.
I actually feel the same, Greg, and I have to say it starts with authenticity, that I think we both believe in each other. Our friendship over the years has always gone back to knowing that each one of us are going to be authentic and real and truthful and being a person of integrity to each other. And that's what I appreciate about you. It's the way that you are living. And it's my appeal to anyone that will listen is to find your authentic inner self and live freely within that authenticity. Whatever your calling is, to be authentic to it, not part of the system, not part of the rat race, but living authentic to who your character is.
Right on. And back at you with that. Maybe that's a good question for people to contemplate on, whether you have a true friend or whether it's a Facebook friend. I have true friends that are Facebook friends too, but I also have a bunch of Facebook friends that I certainly would not go into business with, or I wouldn't know that I would be. But maybe that's a real, just thinking out loud to myself, maybe that's a real test of a true friend. Would I go into business? Would I trust this person to go into business with them or invest some of my money with? And again, six people just popped into my mind where I would have no doubt. Yeah, again, you need to figure out logistics and things like that. But coming from what you said, somebody who's authentic and has integrity, I feel really blessed that 6 or 7 people just popped into my mind that I would have no qualms about entertaining the possibility of going into business with.
I love that, Greg. Well, I think that's a great ending spot. It's a great challenge for anyone that's listening is A, reflect on your friendships, and 2, be a friend. Be that person to someone. So thank you. I look forward to talking to you on the other end of Canada and Banff, because I can't wait to hear about that place and all the things that I need to do to get there. Yeah. So safe travels to you.
All right. Sounds good, man. Great talking with you.
Thank you for listening to the Work Life Eubiosis podcast, part of the Work Life resources created by Own Your 5 to 9. I hope that you have found encouragement and a few ideas to strengthen your journey to purpose, freedom, and balance. Have you overcome burnout and found a new way of life? Millions around the globe are still at the risk of burnout and losing it all. And your story may be the one that sparks not only a dream, but action. Visit ownyour5to9.com for more information and submit your story. While you're there, join the Work Life Eubiosis newsletter and receive additional resources weekly right to your inbox. If you enjoy this podcast, take time to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Share it with a friend or loved one. Remember, the most important organization in the world is the family. Let's do our part to strengthen it. Thank you for listening.